Konami has made a huge mistake. If we were in the perspective of Konami, how would we make a ban list that would balance the game without ruining the entire format and making everybody regret their choices? So let's talk about what could happen, what solutions Konami may potentially have, and some of the problems that exist with an upcoming ban list. Okay, so it should be no surprise that Fire is the best deck right now, and if a ban list is going to have any sort of effect, it will need to hit Fire to some degree. Now, from the perspective of Konami, and they're designing their ban list, they have to hit the deck in a way where other decks can compete, and we're not going to be in a tier 0 format, but they need to do so in a way where it doesn't butcher the deck either. Because if the deck becomes completely unplayable, then it's going to upset the thousands of players who have spent $1,000+ to build a Fire deck. It's going to make people very upset, and it's a big factor why people could leave the game. So if Konami's trying to design the proper ban list, they need to find a balance where people don't feel like they've wasted their money. And this may also mean not hitting the super expensive cards like Battlestar, Wanted, or Bonfire, but also making the deck not so dominant that every single round at a regional or YCS, you have an above 50% chance of playing against the same deck. And for sake of this, we're counting Fire King Snake Eye and Pure Snake Eye as the same deck. They aren't the same deck, but they do share so many similarities. And when you are preparing, you also prepare for them almost the exact same, that we're going to count them as one entity for the sake of this video. That being said, I think it's unlikely that I'll hit the Fire King cards because a lot of the raw power does come from the Snake Eye cards. Even though it would be almost convenient for the Fire King cards to get hit, and that way players wouldn't feel like they wasted a lot of money, it wouldn't do much because the Pure Snake Eye deck would still exist. The cards that are shared between them are the cards that need to be hit, so both decks are taken down a peg. So let's talk about a couple of the options here. If we establish that Snake Eyes are the cards we want to hit, let's take a look at what Snake Eye cards we can touch. These are the Snake Eye cards that exist. Also included in this archetype are going to be the Wanted, Battlestar, Bonfire, and we're going to count Promethean Princess as well. Those are all the new things that we can consider in terms of being hit for the next ban list. Now, which of these would even make an impact in the deck? So obviously hitting Temple would maybe hit Snake Eye. It would hit Snake Eye, but it really wouldn't do anything to Fire King. And again, if you're looking for something that does both, I wouldn't see them hitting Temple. So I'm going to say Temple is not a candidate to be hit. Dramatic Chase is a card that sees barely any play as this, not going to see a hit. Same goes for Subversion. Battlestar Snake Eye is not even out yet, and I don't know what this card even is. Let's talk about the other ones though. Original Sinful Spoil. So this is a hot topic. Should it be banned? There's one other thing I didn't talk about and what Konami has to set up for, and that is the future of the Battlestar and Snake Star archetype. In order for it to still work and for them to sell new products, they do want the deck to still be functional because there are more cards like this coming up, more Battlestar cards, more Snake Eye cards. And the thing is, the Sinful Spoils, while if you get rid of it, would completely sever the link or almost entirely sever the link between Snake Eye and Fire Kings and make both decks a lot more manageable, it would hurt them one drastically. So they'd become way worse. May not even be tier 1, but they'd be playable rogue. But then also, it would mean the Battlestar engine has no way of turning into the Snake Eye engine. And while that may seem like a good thing, because that is a very powerful interaction, what it also means is for the future, like Battlestar Snake Eye card, it just doesn't make sense. In order for this to be somewhat desirable for someone to buy, and for new archetype to see growth and innovation, the archetype has to work. And putting Sinful Spoils anything besides 0 also wouldn't make an impact either. So that's the thing. If we want to take the aggressive approach, then you can ban Original Sinful. And again, even though we're not hitting Wanted or Battlestar in attempts to try and not hurt the budget too much, by banning those two cards would be essentially useless. Now, Pure Snake Eye deck might still be playable because Snake Eye Ash into Poplar into Temple is still very good. Princess is still really good. Flamebridge is still good. Oak is still good. However, no one of the Battlestars would be useless, and those cards would plummet in price. We'd still see around $300 plus drop off in value for the deck, which, while we can say is a good thing, also is very frustrating for players who put money into the deck looking to get enjoyment out of the money, and have it all disappear like that is not ideal. And I think that is not the appropriate way to balance the deck. So I'm going to say that's not it. Next up, we got Snake Eye Ash. So Snake Eye Ash is obviously nuts because it does two things. It'll let you search for any level 1 fire, so usually Poplar, and then get you going into your Snake Eye cards. And then afterwards, you can send it off plus any other card to get your Snake Eye, Flamebridge, or Oak, or Poplar there as well. Either way, getting into your Snake Eye engine. And because it pretty much gives double access to your Snake Eye engine, or into multiple engines at once, this card is the best starter. It can be used as an extender, and the card is just very powerful. That being said, I actually think this card might be a candidate to get banned. Hear me out. If you hit it to 1, it's another potential option as well, because what that means is it's still searchable via Bonfire, but your deck is weaker to draw. Okay, a little bit weaker, but whatever. Consistency is a little bit weaker, but okay, there's ways to make up for that. But mainly the way you're going to get to it is increased Diabellstar or Sinful Spoils counts. And that means you're more vulnerable to Ash, and you're not really getting Snake Eye Ash to get for original to then get for something else, because now the original has to be the card getting Snake Eye Ash. So it may sever the bridge between Snake Eye and Fire King a bit. At least more so than it may seem at first glance. However, what I don't like about that is the pure Snake Eye deck still functions pretty much just fine, even though it's a little bit more awkward. You can still easily account for it, and you may not do Jet Synchron stuff. The deck is still mighty fine. You still have plenty of 1-card plays. Prosperity as well can make consistency. And you still have essentially 4 copies of Snake Eye Ash in your deck that are very powerful to start with, and the deck wouldn't have changed. I don't think consistency hits are typically the best route to go, and I don't think Konami would hit this one either, because I don't think it would do enough, as the unfortunate reality. But the reason I think it might be better off being banned, and you may say this may kill the deck, but I don't think it does, because without Snake Eye Ash, you can't turn any one of your starters into both Fire King and Snake Eye cards at the same time. You can't access both engines in a single card. You'd have to start comboing together these multi-card combos, so you can't build your deck like this 1-card starter 15, 18 hand trap type deck, which is important. And it also means you have more choke points in terms of getting to like Flamebridge, for example. If without Ash, in order to get to Flamebridge, you only have Temple and you only have Snake Eye Oak. So if you have an Ash for Oak, for example, it would pretty much mean that if they can't get the Temple, they can't get to Flamebridge. And if you can stop both, then there's a good chance they won't be able to get to the Flamebridge, and you can stop their Snake Eye deck from getting out of control before it's too late. That's a big problem with Snake Eye, right? You need to stop it early, because trying to combat it after it gets its resources going is almost impossible. And it also means stuff like Ash is going to be more impactful in general, yeah, because without this, Snake Eye Ash, their ability to get into the Flamebridge is not there, but you still will be able to play like all these Wanteds, all these Diabellstars, all these Sinfuls, to get into Poplar, to get into Temple, or to get into Oak, and then Oak into something else. Oak, as far as the starter goes, is also just way worse, right? Because if it's the only card to start, and you have to sack it with another card, again, that's a bit of a combo play. But also, it's just not as powerful advantage. Now, that's not even that bad, though, right? Let's say we're playing Fire King and you have Oak plus Tenki. Say you have to build your deck that way. That's not like the end of the world. If you Oak sack itself off plus Tenki, you get Poplar, get Sinful Spoil. You can then Poplar, let's put it back to my trap card zone, Sinful for Ponix, and you actually got going there. Or you can get a Flamebridge, rather, if you already have Island, or you already have Sinful, and then combo that way. And then later when you revive the Flamebridge, you'll get to revive, you get the Oak effect, or just special summon when it's summoned. So you still will have plays there, they just aren't going to be as insane into hand traps, right? Or as hard to hit. And your choke points will also be there. Now, I understand this is a huge hit to the deck, but I'm saying Oak can carry a lot of the responsibility, and you still will have Sinful Spoils and all that stuff to bridge these archetypes together. And the Snake Eye deck can still function. It's obviously worse, though. But that being said, it's getting new support, right? You are getting Snake Eye Diabellstar to give you another name, to give you a little more push. And that would still be playable. I don't need this deck to be absolute tier 1, but I think that is what's necessary. But anyways, let's talk about other ways that could be hit, because we still want to mention all the options. Hitting Birch again would also wouldn't do anything, like cards barely played as is. Next up is Oak. So this is a 1-of deck, so you wouldn't only way to hit the deck would be to ban this to make any meaningful difference. What would banning Oak do? Oak would make a lot of the combos worse, so you'd be more vulnerable to some hand traps like Nibiru, as well as your grind game be a little bit weaker. It would be a meaningful difference, and it could be that this is the way to go. However, it still would have the most insane Snake Eye Ash plays. It would still be very consistent, and you may just make up the difference by saying, all right, we loosen him a little more. Or just there's different combos to do. I mean, there are. And I think that's just rough, and I don't like that being an option. So, like, it's an interesting thought that maybe banning Oak is a weird play to keep the deck from being too broken. And again, it also does make it harder to get to Flamebridge, right? Because if your Snake Eye Ash gets ashed, and you'd use Poplar, for example, to get original, then you can't really get to access to Flamebridge. Banning one of those names is almost the same as like we talked about a year ago for banning a tier name, right? Less ways to get to Kikalos means it's easier to stop them from playing. That would be like the less drastic approach, I think, banning Oak. I think the deck would still be playable with either of these banned, but I think this is the way to move it forward in a way that decks are still playable, but they become more manageable to deal with. And you guys can let me know what you think of those. I think the more aggressive one is to ban Ash, although we'll see if maybe you guys think it's too aggressive or you think this is not aggressive enough. Yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think. So, and then the other card that they could hit are Poplar, Flameburge, Wanted Diabellstar, I think I said Bonfire, and Princess. So, hitting Flameburge, again, most decks play 1, or this pure Snake Eye plays 2. If you put it through 1, you're not hitting Fire King Snake Eye at all, so don't love that. Unless you're doing like multi-conjunction hits together. I don't like the idea of hitting the Fire King cards because they're really not that unfair. And also, the pure deck would still be able to cope just fine. It's just 1. I don't think it's absolutely critical to have the second Flameburge. Obviously, it's important enough you want to play the second, but you can make do. So you'd have to ban it for it to be meaningful. If you ban it, the deck's power level does go down a lot, but I don't like how it shapes the deck away from, you know, what it's supposed to be its core theme, like the Flameburge here. That's not ideal. But then also the deck, so the deck loses its identity, right? You're no longer becoming the Flameburge deck, now you're becoming the spam level 1 fire deck, which already is, but we want to avoid that, and especially if we're trying to build around future new Snake Eye Diabellstar support. I don't like completely just axing its core theme and becoming just a Fire King or Infernoid or Jet Synchron or Infernoble shooter. So yeah, I don't think banning Flameburge is the correct approach. And there's banning Poplar. Poplar is obviously broken. However, I think if you ban this card, the deck falls apart. It goes to what it was before Agov, which is unplayable. Princess is not enough for it to be anything. Neither is, you know, Bonfire doesn't make a difference, right? Bonfire was legal before Nightmare, and it still wasn't good, right? A Bonfire for Ash did nothing if you're not searching Poplar off it. And Princess is not enough for that to be good, right? Maybe you can make some Snake Eye Ash plus Onyx deck work because Flameburge is broken, but like it really loses all its appeal. Like you're making that engine just fall off entirely, which I don't love. And maybe that's okay because you still have the Wanted and Sinful package be playable in Fire King. Maybe that's what Konami wants, for just that package to be there, so a lot more reduced of a Snake Eye package, and your Wanted and Diabellstar would still have value. I don't like how that kind of makes the future Snake Eye cards just not playable at all. As for hitting Bonfire, this would just be a consistency hit, and again, I don't think that's the way to go, and TCG Konami's not been the biggest on those, except when the light tap on the head almost type of hits, so I don't see that being the direction that Konami takes. Same for Wanted and Diabellstar. Again, both those things, unless they get banned, won't have a meaningful approach. Banning Wanted could be interesting, because like the deck is still playable without it. It becomes less consistent in the deck, and that card's also just a really powerful starter. Like opening up just Diabellstar versus Wanted is a meaningful difference in terms of power. So seeing that card go might be cool, but I don't think it would be big enough that hit to the deck. The deck would still be tier 0 probably. Yeah. Maybe you could do ban Wanted and ban Oak to curb the deck's power level. That could be interesting. But again, we're talking about the point where we don't want to hit people's wallets too much. I don't like banning the Wanted. Now, that being said, it's not like the end of the world to hit these cards and to massacre the price of fire. Just again, from a company who's wanting to keep their buyers and players happy, they have to keep the players who bought the cards happy too. Not just the players who don't want to play fire. Because people spend a lot of money on this deck. They're going to be mad and leave the game if they see that the deck they just spent $1,000 on is no longer playable. And the cards aren't going to be used anywhere else. They're going to just vanish into nothing. And as for banning Princess, I have seen this option being floated. This is like the banning Goblin approach for Goki. However, we saw that didn't do enough. I think it would be the same here with Princess. I think Princess is a really cool card, and we haven't seen the extent of its interesting options yet. The card is broken, and the card could easily be banned someday. In fact, I'd say it's probably likely. However, it may not be the time right now. I'd like to see it have a little more time to shine in other decks and see what else it could do. And I think banning it wouldn't make these other decks unplayable. We see some of these end fields, you actually don't go Princess. And Princess in this meta is not even an insane disruption in the Fire Mirror. So I like wouldn't really want to see Princess get banned. It does help sometimes. It does push out Nib. It does help with lethal setups for sure. And you have the broken Zelantis interactions. And the card is nuts. And it would be a huge hit. I guess I don't want to understate that, but I don't think it would be enough, and it would just make the deck less interesting than it is now, which is not what I want to see happen. And I think it also would just be not fun for the game. Maybe that's a bit of bias. But yeah, so in terms of what I want to predicting the appropriate ban for the Snake Eye deck is going to be, I'm going to go with a bold one and say Snake Eye Ash. And again, there was another option there. But if I'm in Konami's shoes and I'm thinking of a way to solve this problem, this is it. I talked a long time about the Snake Eye cards, but that's the core problem here. When we're in a tier 0 format, it's answering this. The rest of the problems, the rest of the changes in the malishing will be a lot less divisive probably, because they're not going to have as much bearing on like how the meta gets reshaped. This is going to be the most important hit here, is how the Fire King Snake Eye deck is affected. Okay, so there is one other card I think may get banned, and that is this card, Sanctifier. Sanctifier Albion is one of the craziest branded cards to come out in the last year, and it hasn't got its true chance to shine yet. What it does is you target the 2 monsters in grave, or in either's grave. One goes to your field, one goes to your opponent's field. Now, the immediate usage for this is the obvious puppet lock, which is very dumb. However, you can do this with other monsters as well. And if you just ban Puppet, you can do this with Gimmick Puppet. Or you can do this with the DD Orthros. You do it with Elo Supreme Force. There's going to be plenty of ways to flood your opponent out using this card. And I don't think just leaving it be is going to be okay. But part of the other problem as well is the new applications we're seeing it used for. The Voiceless Voice deck, we're seeing Branded Fusion be used as an engine that can put Low in the grave. But what it can also do is put Jowgen in the grave with Sanctifier, and then revive the Jowgen with Sanctifier, and voila! A floodgate has appeared. And that is always a bad sign. The uses of this card are only going to be used for evil. The branded deck is still playable, and while it seems rough to ban a very core piece of the deck, this card has only terrible implications, right? Even just putting a card on your opponent's field, if it wasn't a floodgate, is always something that's so risky in terms of power balancing, because of just the amount of things it turns off your opponent and counterplay it eliminates, that I don't love that existing, especially if it's going to be putting floods onto your opponent's field, or even onto your field. If it just revives your own Albaz so you could fuse during your opponent's turn, that'd be sick, but that's really not the applications it's going to be used for primarily. Sometimes it is doing that, and that is cool, but it's not healthy to be reviving Jowgen or puppet locking. And I think there are way too many other cards to hit for this to be good. I'd rather just get rid of this card, right? The same as banning all these random tuners for Helka Fibrax. Just ban the goddamn problem card. It's this. And Branded will survive. Branded has other options. It doesn't need to be a stupid floodgate deck. The deck is powerful. It has strong interaction pieces without this card. So I'd rather this card just get cut off completely and banned. And I don't think Konami is that averse to doing that. It's not that unreal of an expectation. They saw that one of the ways that Branded kept up in the Tier 0 format at the UUDS was with Sanctifier puppet locking people. How fun. And we saw it at Vegas and these other tournaments as well, that Voices with Sanctifier for Jowgen is a contender. And I think that needs to be addressed. It's not good Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, seeing this card banned, I think would be a fair way to hit this deck. And the other thing as well is if they're hitting fire, they will want to hit some of the other decks as well, just to set up the future. There's new products still sell. And they don't want it just going back to all decks, because again, Konami is a entity that is enticed by profits and by money. So they want to be selling new products. There are probably going to be some small hits to some of the decks that did well before fire, because they don't want to just see us backtracking back to whatever's old. They want to push us in the direction forward. That being said, I think there's no other bans. I think something we can see though is this card getting limited. And the way that OCG limited this card, I think Tier is on everyone's radar. When fire is not there, when there's no Appaloozas staring people down, and the overall power of decks is weaker, Tier is a very strong deck. Since Arizar got banned, it was a viable option. And I think it's getting plenty of new tools with new engines that push out Zombie Vampire, or they push out Ancient Fairy Dragon, Revolution Synchron. The options for Tier are there. Reducing the power of the deck with Planet being one of your best starters, and consistency is a real thing. And I don't think they'll do any drastic hits to it. Like, this doesn't kill the deck either. As we saw, it was playable in OCD with 1 Pearl Rhino, and it is searchable with Terrific Armor as well, that it may just go to 1 planet. And this is just Konami acknowledging that Tier is a viable threat and needs to be knocked down a little bit in terms of playability. Next up for limits is another card that I think is going to follow the same kind of approach, and that is Arana. It is a bit weird to say that Arana should be limited, and when I was doing this, I wasn't sure what Labyrinth card I should put limited, but I felt like it's Konami's idea of acknowledging a deck needs to be hit a bit, one of the older decks that the new stuff can do well, without completely butchering the deck and making people feel the deck is unplayable. Arana to 1 means some of your observed turn 1 combos are less consistent. It also means your resource game you have to be a little more careful with. However, Big Welcome plus Muckracker mean you should still have access to this card pretty much at all times. And then also using this to play into a field is going to be a bit harder now. The deck is still going to be fine. Still have all your furniture pieces. An alternative approach is semi-limiting both furnitures, like Master Duel did, this type of consistency hits. If I had to take a guess, which I think Konami TCG would be more likely to do, I thought maybe Arana 1 would be the most likely. Just again, an acknowledgement of its power and curbing it a little bit, but nothing really drastic at all, and the deck's game plan being fully intact. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's the way to go. I think Big Welcome to 1, like I said earlier, maybe too much of a powerful hit, too much of an impact on his power level, and I don't know what else, besides maybe a couple of the furnitures being restricted a bit, would do any sort of play. And yeah, limited to 1, whatever. It also would mean less Arias combinations to pop off with. The last monster that I thought could go to 1 would be a little different. That is Tidle. So this one would be rather coming back from 0 to 1. And I think this one's, I want to say, obvious. We're seeing a lot of the Dragon Rose come back. And I don't know if we'll see the Dragon Rose get fully to 3 yet, but they're probably going to keep testing the waters, especially with doing, and put this to 1, see if the dragons do anything. They won't, and we may see them come even more and more off the list in the future in light of that. So yeah, Tidle to 1, I don't think is that crazy. I'm not going to explain it too much because we've been seeing dragons come back for a while. This is more, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, but I say if there's a guess I had to make that was more likely to happen, this is up there. Now, Konami has had a trend recently of limiting some of the most powerful state pools. I guess it's not even a recent thing. It's been a thing for a long time. Power cards like Foolish, 1-for-1, Call By, and now a lot of the power floodgates are being limited. So let's talk about a couple of those that may be limited with that. And then one of them I think might be Crossout. So Crossout hasn't really had a chance to be too impactful in any metagames in the last few years ever since its release. It was only really powerful in OCG, largely in part to Maxi. However, now we've gotten a meta where this card is really powerful. The toxicity is apparent, and it's not a card you want to see ever be at 3 in a metagame because it's not a good indicator. The fact that it acts as Solemn Judgment in mirror matches, also pushing through your combos, it's very frustrating to play against. So I think there's a good chance this card may go to 1, as Konami identifies it as a power card that maybe can still exist in games as a bit of a high roll thing, but if they do draw it, it's not so absurd, like something painful that it would just end the game on the spot. And yeah, I think that's where Crossout could be. I wouldn't love the idea of Crossout being a 1. If this was a wish list, I would probably just either ban it or put it at 3. But I think it stays in line with Konami's design for ban lists, where some of these type of power cards that aren't like over powerful, but are very good, are just put to 1, especially spell cards. And then, as I said, there's some of those floodgates getting limited. I think if we're looking for that trend to continue, the 2 most powerful floodgates in the current metagame may go to 1, and one of those might be Summon Limit. Good, please go to 1. And Anti-Spell Fragrance. Yeah, if either of these cards got banned, that'd be even better. However, Konami really hasn't been doing that lately with these floodgates. They've been putting them all to 1, and if that trend continues, then I mean it's better than being a 3. Oh, I hate to see a side deck be like 1 Rivalry, 1 Anti-Spell, 1 Summon Limit in the future. That if that happens, then maybe Konami will have to make another adjustment to ban them, and I mean that could happen very easily. But anything is better than nothing, right? And this is what has to be done as a stepping stone towards a healthier game. I'm all for it. And I think it is very possible that happens, as these are the absolute dominant floodgates over the last few months. And they've proven to be a problem. They made for some very unenjoyable gameplay. And then there's one other card I think would be limited. One of the other decks that was older so one of the other decks that is playable right now that would need to get a tap on the head in terms of lowering consistency and just Konami acknowledging that it's powerful, that didn't exist before Fire King, is Voiceless Voice. So while there was a slight hit with the Sanctifier, the branded version is pushed aside. You can't even play branded cards. You can play branded cards in there, but it wouldn't really make sense to. The deck is still powerful, so I think one way to hit it and to reduce its power a bit, while not really hitting its consistency because you have other cards you could play, is pre-prep. In the same vein of hits they did for the original Necros, they had preparation rights. Maybe they hit pre-prep to 1, just to acknowledge and curb Voiceless's power a little bit. That being said, you definitely don't want to kill this deck, because again, it's also expensive, but also it is getting more support in the next set. There's a new continuous spell for Lotus Search. We're not going to see Konami want to butcher this deck at all. And just acknowledging its power level. And this seems in line with something Konami would do, the same way they had prep to 1 with Necros. I could see pre-prep going to 1 here. Again, like, we're not seeing the Deer Servant seeing that much play in the TCG, so maybe you have to put the Deers into the main deck, or I mean into the deck period. If they're hitting Sanctifier and pre-prep, just, make up that consistency. The card is a bit worse to draw, and it also requires you to use some more extra deck spots. So I'd rather see the Deer Servant be the card played over pre-prep, and I'm okay with the route TCG goes. That is all I had in my prediction for limits. Again, it's not a wish list, so we're not going to limit everything. This already might be aggressive in terms of what I think they're doing, but I guess I don't know how predictions work, if I should be more conservative or aggressive with my choices. Anyways, in terms of 7 limit, I did predict 2 things. One of them was very random, but we got to have a random hit in there because Konami does random things sometimes. Things that leave you scratching your head, like Shooting Riser to 1, or Lightning Storm to 2, and I think another random power spell they may hit to 2. Just the same way they did it to Desires. It's just Prosperity, right? Like, yeah, the card's not doing much right now, but the card is still bonkers. Only because, in specifically Fire King and Snake Eye, this doesn't seem to be the best option at the moment, because it may be in the future, if they, depending on how they hit things. Prosperity, the 2 would do very little to hit consistency, but it'd be something. I don't know. I don't have a good justification for this. The same way it's a random hit that Konami would do. It's just a gut feeling like maybe Konami will randomly semi-limit this card because people have been complaining about it, and they're just like, this is their way of addressing people's concerns in a way that's not really doing so. And this card got limited or stayed at 3, I would also not be surprised, but this is the Hail Mary guess. Maybe let me know if I'm being ridiculous here. And then the other one is, yeah, another weird one. Any semi-limit's going to be weird, right? I think semi-limiting doesn't make too much sense. I don't even know what it's called here. How do you spell it? Planet. And that is Wraithsoth. So why Wraithsoth? I think that Kashtira did come up a lot in playability in the events before Fire. And if Konami wants to curb it in some sort of way to show that it exists, again, like a slight hit, and then this goes to 2. You could go back to 2 with Unicorn, but they don't want to, in their eyes, they may not want to put the same card back and forth. It seems like it shows they don't know what they're doing, although to a degree you can argue that in some ways they don't. And if they want to just do a slight hit to deck like Kashtira, then haha, Planet to 2. How about that? I don't know. I don't really have a great idea for this, but I felt like I wanted to have some representation for Kashtira on this list for a lot of these old decks that were played from this January remote dual YCS period, because I think Konami does want to pay attention to that, and I think they would. Oftentimes that has happened where these old decks get hit a little bit, as random as it may be. And if I were Konami, what would it be? It's not going to be Fenrir, because I know they like that as a generic staple card. It's not going to be Unicorn, because it may not be Unicorn because they just had it to 2 and put it back to 3. And then what else would you hit on the deck? It's just Planet. Who knows? Or Shifter, but I don't think Shifter's going to get hit. And in the same way, I have a stupid hit for Kashtira. It's the same acknowledgement for Runic cards. Josh got his one Bologna, and the tip to 2 is just a nice pat on the head. I think I said I had 2 cards, some of them limited. I meant 3, but this is the last one. Another kind of Hail Mary hit of just them acknowledging that Runic exists and like slightly hitting it. They've been better at not hitting these cards as much recently at 2, and that's a great thing. And if we don't see these cards or these same limited section expand like this, then that's fantastic. I'd be all for it. However, Konami in the past has done stuff like this, and I wouldn't be surprised to see stuff like this go to 2. Now, if Konami is more aggressive with these could easily be like at 1 as well. Maybe I get half points for that, but I think these cards are less played or less popular than Arana or Tier, or less of a problem as well. So we'd see them be like here rather than here, and that's how Konami would think. Maybe I'm just being ridiculous. Again, this is not a wish list. It's like my last video. This one is actually a prediction. Maybe I'm being stupid. Who knows? And then there are some cards I think may go back to 3, specifically cards that were just put to 2 as almost a trial run to see how they'd function, and didn't do too much. So there's 2 cards that meet the bill there, and that is Terop. It's at 3 in Master now as well, and hasn't done much. And I think Konami will bring this back. We've seen a lot more powerful engines being introduced into the game. Things like the Millennium cards coming out in Info, as well as the Demonsmith cards coming out in Info. If you want a video on those, then let me know. But there are powerful engines being released in the game. And Horus cards too, another powerful engine. And Bellstar cards. With all these powerful engines, we can start bringing back some of these other engines that may not be as powerful anymore. Terop is still good, but it's not broken. And I think putting it to 3 is fine. Master Duel is proof of that in terms of it's playable, but not insane. And when it was at 2 here, it hasn't done anything yet. And then if you guessed it, the last card is not super original. Again, it's a wish. It's not a wish list. It's just a prediction. I think Bankertoss will make its way back to 3. You could argue the Dragon Rulers may come back to 3 as well. However, we haven't seen Konami do that yet at all. They haven't moved any of the Dragon Rulers to 3. So I think maybe they'll want to bring back Tidle to 1 first and then see if they do anything. And then if still they do nothing, then they'll start pushing these back towards Unlimited. Although they could pull the gun or pull the trigger sooner than I anticipate and put them to 3 now. That's just not what I foresee at the moment. Yeah, I think if we are seeing a ban list over the next month, and again, that's a big if, who knows, then this is what I expect to happen. It's a bit aggressive with some of my choices, but the philosophy I'm looking for here is to hit all the decks that are used now, but not in a way that completely makes people unhappy with their budget choices, but also doesn't hamper the deck's ability to function with new support, particularly Snake Eye and Voiceless Voice, and for Konami to sell future products. We want to get out of this tier 0 meta while also shaking things up. We don't want to just be in the exact same meta we were before Fire decks either. And I think this is a way that Konami may go about doing so. And I think it would be okay for the game. I'm curious what you guys think. If you have any predictions, any cards I missed, anything I was too aggressive with, or anything you just completely disagree on, let me know down below. And I'll see you guys all next time. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the video. A great way to support the channel is to get the TSX1 sleeves on tsx1.com. These are the sleeves I use at every event. They are fantastic quality. They feel really great to shuffle in your hand, your deck, fanning out your grave. They slide really smoothly, and they last into our tournament, so you're not compromising quality either. Use the code POTATO10 on the website. You'll get 10% off across everything.